Welcome to my atelier. Welcome to Painting Discourse. Welcome to this stream. This is going to be another one from the project Serial and Method. Going to be continue. I'm pretty sure that last time I did a couple changes to, not the composition, to background that was absolutely needed. And today I want to continue with this idea as well, just because I think that that's what painting needs right now. This is just a part or excerpt or just a fragment of the large piece that I'm working on, I'm really glad that I started to work on this fragment, because there is so many problems that I'm working on, or actually working through with just the fragment. And it happens time to time to all of us, to everyone. It is happening to me all the time, because my sketches are fairly small. This one is slightly bigger. You know, it should have all the information, but it's only black and white. It's a charcoal study, and right now I'm dealing with the color. And the main problem with this painting is that when you scale your paintings from the sketches to a larger format, suddenly spaces like this were negligible in your sketch, and you couldn't really, you don't even go to details like this in your sketch, because first of all they might not even be there, or you don't even pay attention to these things because they're not important. They're really such small pieces on the painting that you don't even have it. I believe that you don't even have a chance to work on them. However, when you enlarge your sketches to this size, like I'm right now, which is only 2 figures there, and it's going to have the height 2 meters and some change. This is actually only 190, so this is even smaller than the actual piece is going to be. So I'm finding certain ideas in certain positions and certain, little places simply underdeveloped. I'm trying to work through them right now. There's plenty other videos that that shows my struggle with certain things, feet especially. Then I had a problem with the position of the head and the cap that I talked a lot, and I was talking about the hands and the big mistake that I did with the hands and the book that he's holding. So there's plenty of mistakes that I'm going through, and the reason being is that I believe that I'm a studio painter. I like to paint over and over and over on top of the existing painting, only because when there's something that I don't like, I tend to change it. Sometimes I change it and it has a positive result, and another time, as with the example with the hand that you checked in the previous videos, you will see sometimes it's just blue. Sometimes it's just blow right into my face, and I have to go back and repaint it and put it back to its original position. So this is something that our prima painters don't have the luxury of doing. They just place the brush strokes and do a couple adjustments, and then that's it. I work over and over and over and over. It's really it might sound counterproductive, from the point of view of time, but I can't help myself. I like to figure out the composition. I like to figure out every little piece. I don't play with accidents as much as, I don't know, you would see in the watercolors that they just mix together. Even though that I believe in the happy accidents and they exist, but unfortunately, they usually happens to people that they know what they're doing, right? So when you look at painters and then other videos, you see some painters just doing or pulling incredibly beautiful results out of mistakes. That being said, those are professionals, so they know that mistakes, it's not necessarily mistakes. If you see something in that and you have some new idea that kind of derive from that wrong position of a brush strokes or wrong tone or wrong color or wrong hue or wrong temperature, whatever it might be. So it seems to me that these happy accidents are happening to prepared painters, not just random, I decide, oh, I'm just gonna grab the brush and just gonna start, putting paint around. That's not how these accidents works. I think that happy accident happens when you put really good brush stroke next to a fine brush stroke, and then when they collide, they create that happy accident. It's not, happy accident never happen when you put a bad brush stroke next to a bad brush stroke. That I don't believe in that at all. So last time when I ended the stream, I was talking about that everything is kind of a desaturated and cool, and when I say cool, I don't mean like it's a super cool painting. I mean it's a cool as a temperature of the colors there, and it seems like everything is like in the overcast. This is something that I believe was written in Delacroix's journal. He was talking about painting like everything is in the shadow, or overcast rather, not in the shadow, in the overcast. That means that you are developing the forms in every part of the painting, and you don't really go with these high contrast shadows all over the place. You're trying to keep it coherent and consistent, and then when you're coming closer to a finish with your painting, you will start to bring the saturation, on places that you want. I don't know if this is exactly the best example of that, but I'm kind of subconsciously keeping in mind, I'm keeping everything closer to each other. Everybody, I don't go into these extremes like, oh, I'm gonna push like really this part, I'm gonna push this and see how it is, because I am. This is not a sprint like when you do with the alla prima, that you just place really quickly. You have to put down the focal point immediately, keep it kind of protected. This is a long run. This is a very, very long run. It's like an ultra marathon. So I'm giving myself a space to develop forms more and more, and the ideas more and more. And then when I'm 100% sure, I'm gonna execute those beautiful kind of last touches that everyone of us like to do. Everybody loves to put those highlights in the nose, on the eye, but I am kind of keeping myself aware of these things. I love to put those highlights there. I know that some painters love to put them there, so they have that kind of a full range. I have a lightest light and I have a darkest dark, and then I can work in between. Somehow, whenever I push this to extremes from the beginning, I am getting lost in the middle. So I prefer to do this kind of a ground middle work, and I prolong this sometimes even longer than I should. And especially when I used to paint in the academy, they were forcing me to paint quicker, to think quicker, and to execute things quicker. And I understand the benefit of it. And I highly encourage you to do like a quick studies and then longer ones. When you really look at this part and you say to yourself, oh, I don't like it, I'm gonna paint over it. And you can paint over it really quickly with kind of alla prima brush strokes, and then come back to it next day and then work the same way. So there is a plenty of, what I'm trying to say actually is the plenty of ways how to execute this painting. This is the way how I am, this is the way, not that I was taught, this is the way how I developed my painting process. I don't encourage you to just jump into this and work the way I do, because I don't think that my approach would be better than the others. This is something that works for me, not because I repeated it so many times and it become a muscle memory. It's because it fits my personality and my personal, how would I put this? It fits to my personal it's not even style. That's not the right word. It's not even related to what I want to say. These are my aesthetics. This is the aesthetics that I like. It's not the style that I paint. It's not the style that I'm trying to achieve. It's the aesthetic that I want to get from the painting. So that will be probably the reason why I don't tell you, or use these exact paints, use this exact brushes, because in the long run, it's going to be counterproductive for you. And I know that painters love to do the things that, oh, you bring this palette, you bring these brushes, you're going to paint this way. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So I'm sorry to tell you that. But, and that's the reason why we have this painting this course, because I am trying to show you how much struggle it is for a painter, like a beginner like I am, because I still feel that I'm the only beginner painter, how much struggle it is to create something larger and bigger and fully developed. These are not, even though these might be perceived as an illustration because they told certain stories, I don't think that that's how I approach this painting. These are also my paintings. I don't like to think of them as a decorations because this is not a decorative work. So that's another way that you can think of paintings, because they ultimately hang on the wall and they're trying to make the space nice. So that's, you can call them decorations. I saw many examples of decorations. They're just, and I have customers that they told me, oh, I have a yellow sofa, can you paint something yellow? Well, no, that's it. And I'm sorry, I went on the rant. What I'm trying to say is that it's your choice. It's you. This whole canvas, it's your universe, and you can do whatever you want with it. So do something that makes you happy. And I heard the important thing, I don't want to call it important thing. I heard something that kind of stuck in my head, is that we have a problem with environment, so let's not waste paper to create a bad artwork, because it's just a waste of a material. So and this is really stuck in my head, so I'm trying to consciously work on this, to not just leave it on the side and be like, oh, I trying to kind of test what I wanted to. I spent so much time, I spent XY amounts of euros for the art supplies and the space and whatnot, and then I don't care, it can burn. No, I'm trying to push myself and push the painting towards the completion. So it is fragment from a larger piece, but it can hold on its own. All right, so that's the introduction to what this is all about, and let me just go right into this. My setup is very simple. I repeated it at the beginning of every class as a kind of a warm-up, class. This is not a class at the beginning of every stream. It's very simple, so I'm not gonna dwell into it that much. I have cheap brushes. I have pigments that are not specific brand. The reason or the idea behind these paints is that I need pigments to do what I want them to do, rather than just blindly follow some kind of a brand and be like, oh, I paint only with this brand and every other brand is bad. These are all different brands. Most of them are kind of a, how would I put this? Let me rephrase that. These are really set up the way that that I work. So they are not only divided in the values, they are also divided in temperature. So you can see that I have a warmer, cooler variants of these hues, and also you might see that there's more of them. It's just 3 or 5 reds. There is a 3 or 5 greens, a 3 or 4 or 5 yellows as well. It's because they have a different value, they have a different saturation, and they have a different transparency or opacity. So that's the way how my palette works, because sometimes I need a transparent color, sometimes I need opaque colors, or pigments rather, I should say. Sometimes I need something warmer, sometimes I need something cooler. And I know that most of the painters are talking about the limited palette. In my perception, every palette it's limited palette in the sense because I use only primary and right now greens as a secondary, but usually it's just the yellows, ochres, and then I have reds and blues and titanium white and ivory black. Those are 2 pigments that I can mention because, but this is a titanium, that's not titanium zinc. So when you check your paint, make sure that it's just a titanium pigment. Zinc tends to be something really poisonous when it comes to not your body, but it can harm your paints because it flakes away and it doesn't really stick, it doesn't bond with the other colors. So that might be the only thing that I recommend you to go for really pure expensive titanium white. So that's about the paint and the palette and the brushes. I mentioned my medium. It's nothing else, just the mineral spirits and linseed oil mixed together in the ratios that I need. I follow the fat over lean kind of idea, just to keep the painting keep the layers of the paint stick and work to each other, and then the process of drying, so it doesn't crack, it doesn't peel off. So it's about the medium. Then I have my my resources here, and again it's just old school heavy hitters, masters, as you wish. There's a Rembrandt, Caravaggio, Velázquez, Titian, just to name a few. I have this beautiful book that I received as a present that I adore. That would be probably the best way to describe it, that I adore, because Rembrandt really helps me to answer questions that I struggle with. So that's why I use his book as a reference, is always present. Same goes for Caravaggio, same goes for Velázquez and Titian, and list goes on and on. But I'm mentioning these guys not because necessarily they are the best of the best. These are probably the most recognizable, that's the first, and they have all different styles, and they add to, when you combine them together, they add to everything what we know about classical painting. So of course you can use the 19th century, the kind of very close to already that kitsch painting, which is probably Bouguereau is the one that jump into my mind immediately when I'm talking about really the last greatest kind of a representation of a classical painting versus early photography. So I think that after photography showed up, painters like Bouguereau, or followers, or people that, or painters that were after Bouguereau already switched to that beautiful another era of Impressionism and post-Impressionism and so on and so forth. But this is not the history lesson, so you can check these painters out for yourself, and I would highly recommend you to do so, because art history, it's like another hand to paint with, and knowing what who is who and what is what, and why the painters painted the way that they did, and what styles they preferred, and the brush applications and colors and pigments and mediums and surfaces and whatnot. So that's another hand would be knowing your materials, which is again technical part. So we have art history, we have a knowledge about the materials, and then we have actual practice of painting. Because from my experience, most of the questions about the paintings are theoretical, answers are practical. That's just something that I see over and over and over again in talking to other fellow painters, artists, that most of our conversations are in theories, and then, you know, the only way how to put really these theories into test, you have to practice it. So let's get right into it. And also, not to forget, I have digital sources where most of the time I have the anatomy there, or sketches, because previously I show this all the time as well. I have a lot of, you know, reference, the prints and whatnot from different masters, and, you know, the parts of the feet, because I was, you know, trying to paint feet. So I have my anatomy references there. I don't use photographs because I mentioned this also a million times. I don't like to paint for a photograph because, not because it's bad or I'm against it. Well, by all means, go for it if you like it. I always get bored to staring on the photograph and trying to. It doesn't really excite me. I'm not saying that you cannot have a great results from a photograph. Of course you can, but it's just the idea of painting from a photograph makes me feel bored. I don't have another. I'm not interested in doing that. So that being said, like I mentioned, I like to look at the beautiful painting. I don't care if it's made from the photograph or from the real life. I don't like to execute paintings that way because I don't have a patience to do that. I like to have my mind free, and if I want to do this, I'll do this, regardless the photograph or not. So that's about that. Lastly, since this is not like a classical kind of a stream about how to paint, please grab your paints and brushes and whatever art medium that you like to use, and work alongside with me, and that will be probably the best way to enjoy this stream, because there is not that much new that I can say. This is not an entertainment video. This is just a live stream of someone who paints in a studio. So I would say that it's quite boring to look at, but I'm glad that you guys are watching it. So let's get right into it. The first thing that I do, and I want to stress to everyone who feels that it's an overwhelming experience to paint, is that take a moment, look at your painting, assess it, whenever you're going back to it, and ask yourself what works and what doesn't. And you see me backing up all the way in the back of my studio out of the frame. And the reason is that I need to see my painting as a whole. That means that I don't want to move my eyes back and forth I'll just go closer. If I'm here, if I want to see the whole painting, I have to move my head up and down like this, and I'm kind of remembering what is here and comparing to this, rather than just seeing it in its all entirety. That's a difficult sentence to say for someone who has English as a second language. So I'm looking at this as the whole, and then I can assess it properly. Why is this important? Because if I'm here, firstly, I'm looking at this under the angle, so I'm not looking directly this way. I'm looking under the angle, so it's distorted. Another thing is I want to compare the size of my feet with the size of my head, and I can't just going like this and trying to make sure that they are in the right position. So what I do, I move all the way back. I'm just hitting I'm leaning on the wall in the opposite side of the studio, and I'm looking at my painting, and I am assessing the situation. Right now, everything looks in the one tone, as I mentioned, because of, Delacroix. I'm going to start working a little bit on the ground, because I feel that I need to right now build it from the ground up. I have developed faces a little too much compared to they're not finished by all means. They are really just beginnings of the portraits. They need a lot of work, but they are way too developed than anything else. So I have to work on other parts of this painting to get to where I want to be. And I'm asking myself right now, how far do I want to go with this grass or the ground plane that I put there. And one way I kind of like it, that it's a desaturated, it's kind of calm, it doesn't really bother. But then on the other side, I would like to the painting to pop. To when you by pop, no, that's probably not the right term. I want it to grab your attention, and I have multiple ways to do it. One of them is to bring saturation a little high up, so it's just kind of like, when you have something bright yellow in the corner of your eye, you simply have to turn your head. And a good example would be when you're looking at my palette, the yellows are just jumping out compared to, I don't know, these earth tones like ochres and siennas. And then again, we have these bright cadmiums, and they again pops. And this is something that you can definitely see on the palette, and it's easy to see in the palette because you have a clean colors. All these colors are mixtures. There is no really clean color, and by clean I mean unmixed color. These are all mixtures of the paint. So I'm asking myself, if the background is going to get more saturation, then it's going to bring the attention, but it's bringing attention to a ground plane. How often do we look on the ground when we walk around? Like very, very, very little. Our attention is always towards the faces and portraits. And bringing the saturation up, or tone, or contrast on the ground plane could really throw away that idea of this being a focal point. So I am in my head, I'm thinking about what to do. Maybe there is another way. Instead of bringing the saturation of this higher up, I might bring the saturation of the legs up, because they're a little bit more important than the ground. And having that kind of a desaturated, a large area against something really nice and saturated right here might be more beneficial. I don't know. That's the reason why I have this. I'm sorry. This is the reason why I have this fragment to work on. I also have a small sketch laying somewhere, I have as a digital copy, and that is not really. I don't use it that often, that sketch, because it's really underdeveloped. And my recommendation to you is work a little bit harder on your sketches. Don't be lazy like I am. Color sketches. Work really, don't care. I have to stress it. Don't care if this leg is exactly like the leg should be in your sketch. Just work with the shape, approximate shape. It doesn't even, it needs to be just just a line, a thick line with a thick brush, and that's it. Just hit it with the right tone, right value, and right saturation, and work on this with your color sketch, rather than just, having a nice sketch that gives you no answers to your problems, which I did. And it's hard for me to admit it, but I don't have a teacher behind me or master that will tell me that, oh, you didn't do your preparatory work, so go back to it. So I have to, kind of tell it to myself, and so should you, because Rembrandt will see it. Rembrandt will see it, and he's looking at me, and he knows that I am not doing it right. So I feel ashamed in front of him. That's the only thing that that pushes me how would I put this? Seeing his work pushes me to get better with my own work and my own process. So, so what to do? Assessing, analyzing. And I think that I could push the saturation higher a little bit, only because if I keep it this way, it seems kind of okay. But the moment that this gets a little bit more saturated, a little bit more developed, it might overpower that grass in the background, and then it might actually, the contrast might be too much between these two, and again, it would overpower the focal point. That might be one thing. Another thing is that I might leave it as it is right now, because I am very close to where I want to be with that painting, and I don't want it to go any further forward, or forward to viewers' attention, because that's enough. I want to focus more on there, and maybe I should develop a little bit of the figures in the behind. That's another idea that I'm kind of thinking about. And right now I have to do the right decision, and I don't know which one is it. And probably there is not the right decision. That's just a leap of faith that I have to work with right now. Either I'm going to make this a little bit more saturated, and then make this leg twice as saturated, so it does not fall into the same category. Or I leave this like it is, and I'll saturate and repaint the legs, which I wanted to do anyway. So it wouldn't be extra work for me. It would be just correcting what I already established to myself that it needs to be corrected. Or, and then, but there, it has some minus, and then I might make this saturation a little too much. And then I will run into a problem. Then this is going to really fall off. It's going to seem like this part of the painting does not belong to the upper part, because they don't have a relationship between each other. The color relationship that they don't have, and value relationship and tone relationship. So I ran into that problem. Or I'm just simply, because this is so all over the place, I feel like I need to work on it. And maybe that's not this is not going to give me the answer of my problem, because this is really just a detailed part, and I have to think about my painting as a whole right now. Running into a problem again, that I will overdo these parts right here, and they will get in the way of the focal point. So really, this assessment is something that every single painter before me or right now is doing. There is no, and if you don't do it in your own work, you should start doing it immediately. without the question. Just look at your painting critically. Look at your painting like like you are criticizing someone else, because it's easier for us to see mistakes on someone else's work than on our own. So whenever I come to studio, first day, in the morning, I don't go into painting immediately. I'm looking at this painting like someone else painted it with a fresh eye. So should you. I think I talk too much. And this is not a radio or podcast, so I should probably start painting. I think I'm going to work on the leg. I think. I have a feeling that that will be that will probably, and let me give you my reasoning behind this. I was standing all the way in the back, and I also I have a mirror that's pointing towards my painting, so I can see the mirror reflection. And I'm looking at the mirror reflection, I'm looking at the painting, and I feel this connection between the head, arms, and these legs, especially. Also comes also about these, because I was painting these with a different background, and I was focusing on getting them matched together. So, and I have the same problem. I'm matching the faces together, and I'm matching the hands together, but I need to match a head with hands with feet together, or legs in this particular example. So I'm probably going to push that leg, because I wanted to do it anyway, and then I'll see what to do. And if I don't like it, I will just scrape it. Okay. So let me see. I'm gonna do a little experiment right now. Not experiment. It's not an experiment. I'm just gonna take. I'm just going to take the color, and I'm gonna scumble on top of it a little bit. And the reason why I can scumble on top of it, because I have pretty much a good idea about the position of the leg and the position of the knee and where it's supposed to be, and I have some kind of a form showing. What I want to do right now, I want to saturate a little bit more. So if you work with some drawing software, you would, take the leg and you would just bring the saturation all together with one slide. I cannot do it, but what I can do, I can create kind of a layer of a higher saturation right here against the desaturated background. So what I'm thinking is and this is really, really warm, but I was painting with the cooler colors or cooler pigments previously, So I mentioned that when I work with the cool, then I work with the warm. I work with the cool, and then I work with the warm again, and I just doing this variation, and then I do variation with scambling against okay, bringing saturation up. And this is a kind of a dry brush technique, which means that I'm not really covering everything. I'm creating kind of a, like the kind of a masking layer with the higher saturation. And I step back and it immediately helped. Immediately it helped. Because and I know that it's really difficult to see on the screen, but our eyes are so powerful that they can see these shifts in the temperature, and they're very sensitive to these shifts in the temperature. And immediately that kind of warmth that I put in the knee area works as a tool that helps me to not only with the form to make it stands out, not only with the contrast to stands out, but right now with the warmth against the cool, because things that are warmer automatically appeals closer to us because of atmospheric perspective. So I think this was definitely a right choice to at least make it a little bit warmer. And right now with scambling, I can choose how much warm layer of this so-called masking tape do I want to put on the top of it. And I'm feeling that, okay, I'm warmed this part, warmed this part a little bit. I wanted to go to warm it this as well, but then this is receding in the back, so I'll keep it cool, and then I'm going to warm this part rather, because I want this to go forward, the actual feet, not the leg. And you can see this is really, really saturated color, but it's just a dry brush. That means it's not really covering everything. You can still see underlayer. So I'm giving a little bit more life to this kind of a desaturated foot and warming it up. And this might be a little too much, but I'm not worried about this, only because I know that I'm going to paint on top of it. And for those of you who watch stream often, you know that I'm going to start painting with the cool colors into it. So I will create a kind of the beautiful effect of layering warm and cool, warm and cool. So I started with the adjustment layer, so-called adjustment layer for digital painters. What I did was that I adjusted a saturation a little bit. I wanted to put that. And I am varying the saturation based on how much paint I'm actually putting down. I put a little bit more, somewhere I put a little bit less, And that's the beauty of the scambling. Okay, cool. All right, and I'm all the way in the back of my studio again, and I'm assessing that temperatures, and I think it's working right now. I don't know if you can see it on your screens, but I can definitely see it in the real life, which is the important part for me. Okay, and I can get into some modeling of the form right now. I could grab my trusted charcoal, but I think I have enough confidence in just working with the brush right now, because most of the leg it's actually pretty developed. I know that it looks crude, but still I have the main areas down, and I'm looking at the anatomy references right now, and I think that I'm pretty close to where I want to be. Yep. So I'm mixing right now kind of a charcoal color. And again, I want to adjust certain things. So it's going to be probably way too light, of course. And again, this is a dry brush, so I'm going with my brush on the top of existing layer. I'm not trying to paint, I'm not trying to place like a new color. I want that transparency through the process of my brush skipping through the paint, through the layer, rather than just covering everything directly. But this kind of process is possible only if the paint underneath is sticky or touch dry. Not if it's wet. If it's completely wet, you have really hard time to do this, and you're just gonna end up with something that you don't like. How do I know that? Well, it happens multiple times. So I'm working on this like a little bit, because I think that it needs a little bit more of resolution. And by resolution, I mean that it needs a little bit more of detail, so it stands out. So I create not only contrast different, the temperature different, but also resolution difference. This is all the way in the behind. It doesn't need to receive that much attention by detail as leg that it's forward. But again, I don't want to overpower what's going to be focal point, the main focal point. And you see me working with my fingers. That's something that I like to use a lot. It's my fingers. I use them as a paintbrushes, since they're reusable and free in a sense. And tapping the color or the pigment or the paint, what I'm trying to do is like create a very soft transitions, because I don't want hard edges as it is right now. Oops. torch that I have right now, the sun shining right on my canvas, and it doesn't anymore. I had to. Alright, I'm bringing saturation slowly up, and not only saturation, with this right now I'm trying to also correct some anatomy. And you don't need to necessarily think of this as corrections, but maybe adjustments or improvements. Right, step by step, I'm trying to show the anatomy, the muscle, tendons, that pressure that buildups when you have all the all of your weight pressed on one leg. And this is really, for me, a very slow, methodical process. It's not like that. It's not as methodical as that kind of a classical French atelier, but it's definitely not random, like, I don't know, like abstract painting. And I don't want to lose certain, brush strokes that I'm satisfied with completely. I just want to want to work them as a whole, not just the kind of a disconnected parts. I'm still thinking about the form, I'm still thinking about the placement, I still think about all of the anatomy parts, and I also have the, as I mentioned, I have the anatomy here, so I glance there time to time to just, make sure that I don't invent the anatomy that we don't have. And I need to raise it up a little bit more. Oh. Okay. There we go. So what I'm working on is right now something that you might call a portrait of a leg. I'm placing a couple brush strokes down, and then I'm, walking back a little bit, asking myself, is this a correct value? Is this correct temperature? Is it right saturation? I am comparing it to a whole painting. Don't ever forget to compare it to a whole painting, because everything is related. This little piece of light really bothers me. And this is another problem with working with a natural light, that you have to be ready for this, unfortunately. And it's also due to my studio, it's not turned toward the north. So that will be one recommendation for the studio setup, is that if you can't, that's okay. You do what I do, that you cover certain parts. If you can have a studio that it's pointing towards a north, get that studio that has a north windows and north light. But if you can't, that's not like an end of the world. It's just, it's gonna make your life a little bit less complicated. And with the leg also, I'm trying to create the form, I'm trying to have a correct anatomy, but I also want to tell the story. And the story is that they're walking through a lot of different types of environment. Push that separation between fingers a little bit, like between, not fingers, those are, I completely blanked out right now. How do you say? Fingers are on the hand, but toes, between toes. Because there's probably the part, that in my mind there has a difficulty to get into. So it's a little cleaner. And it also helps me to create that kind of a separation, abstract separation between the fingers, because it's the lighter part. When you think about the fingers, that's a lighter value right there. Because it's a different plane, it's catching more light from this position than it would be with another position. And I'm correcting my drawing a little bit, because again, I really like not all of my painting being 100% accurate, but certain places or certain parts, I want them to follow a little bit. I want them to follow loss of physics. That means that I have a light that falls down this way. I have a form that when it turns away from me, it catches more light or less light, depend on the position. This is certainly in my mind, feet, hands, and face are certainly the places that it's possible to show nicely. And it's probably the most difficult part, at least for me, because it's just a really feet and hands, not feet and hand. Feet and hands are probably as important, or as important, I wouldn't say important, as challenging to paint as portrait itself. Maybe even more challenging, because we kind of subconsciously know how they look and how they should move without ever studying them so closely as portraits. So I'm making a really small correction that I don't believe that are visible on the screen. But trust me, they are there. Okay, I don't want to overdo it. I don't want to lose that rawness of nice. And since I don't have a like with the for those of you who like to draw, I don't have or paint digitally, I don't have an undo or eraser button, so I always have to repaint everything. And right now I need to mix a little bit of a background color because there's something that helps me to adjust the outside shape. least. Yes, too dark, way too dark. So I'm gonna line it up a little bit. Cool. So again, I'm keeping it these adjustments, I'm keeping them very close to each other, and I'm really moving very, very slowly. And the reason being is that I don't want to overdo it. And I want to leave myself a little bit kind of a space for maneuvering with the painting. So again, I adjusted the shape a little bit. So I still have a read or like a visual clues that its feet, it has a right proportion, it has a right size, but it doesn't jump from that much from the background. So it's kind of a connected. And this is really step-by-step process, and it's really slow and tedious. Unfortunately, there's nothing there's very little I can do with this. slowly but surely. I'm looking for a different reference, anatomy reference for the foot. I'm wondering if I have it. I'm looking through my anatomy references for feet, and I highly recommend you to have your own library with reference images, because that will definitely help you to okay, got it. The problem is that when you have a lot of them, you might just get lost in. And what I'm trying to do is to kind of find the proper position for the foot, and then also make it stand out a little bit, not as much that it would overpower the portrait, but still not being mushy and kind of a, and by mushy I mean, I meant kind of unresolved, with the feeling of like it's not. So I didn't know what I didn't know what to do with it. I just, you know, painted some shapes there. Because right now, from the distance and from the reflection, I can see parts of that foot, but I cannot see the whole thing altogether. And since I put a darker background there, a nice kind of a contrast. It disappeared. It didn't disappear. I changed it. And I want to keep that contrast there, just a little bit, so it's just so your eye can pick up immediately. Oh, that's a foot. So I'm making really small adjustments, not really big ones, just to giving it a clarity. It's like when you have your camera and you bring your picture back to focus, out of a focus. You know, if you have your lens and you're just zooming and trying to find the focus. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going back and forth and trying to readjust. And again, not everything, because when we think about these as some kind of a hierarchy, that goes same for fingers. I can't develop every single finger. Actually, I can, but I think it would be counterproductive, because I believe that same as with the portrait, there are things that are in the focus, that's like eyes, nose, mouth, maybe ear, depends on the position, but some parts, and that's something that Rembrandt does so well, and some parts are just dissolve into a background. The detail is still there, it's just not as prominent. Because it some of you might experience the problem with the fingers, especially, or toes, in this particular situation, is that they all looks like a sausages. Well, yes and no. Because in some ideas, when you think about them, those are just the tubes that sticks out from the larger form, and they are divided into fifth segments, right? And first segment being the big toe, which is the biggest, and then they're gradually they're shorter and smaller. So we tend to think of them that way, but the truth is that they are all different in shape and size, and not only the shape is different, but the orientation of the fingers is different. They kind of create a specific shape that they have altogether when you think of them as a one continuous shape at the beginning, just to give yourself a little start. And I don't want to break that overall shape, because if you break that overall shape, then no matter what you do inside, it's still going to look weird. So I'm going to work very, very hard right now to maintain the shape that I labored over at the beginning stages. It's not like I'm, you know, I don't want to say married to it, but it's not like I won't change it if I think it helps, but it has to help composition. It cannot simply help to make the foot looks better. It has to make the composition looks better. That's probably, if there is one thing that you will take from this painting, this course streams, is that think of composition as your number one priority. And you'll be surprised what results we're going to get. Positively surprised. How kind of cool results you're going to get, because the composition it's, to me, the most important part of the painting. And why am I so adamant about the composition being the most important? Well, because when you look at work of other painters, they have different styles, they have different brush strokes, they have different ideas that they developed, or different stories that they want to say. One thing is constant, and that's good composition makes it really pleasing to look at painting. Whether it's classical, whether it's Impressionism, Post-Impressionism, abstract art, it doesn't really matter. They have one thing in common, and that's composition. Whether you or I like it or not, that's what it is. On the other hand, since you're talking about the composition, or actually since I talk about the composition not that much, you are welcome to disagree with me. And you know what? I don't judge you for that. It's more like I respect that opinion. Because there are actually right now, when I think about it, there are painters that they have no idea about the composition and they're still very successful. So, yeah. but I don't see them as or actually I don't want to say that I don't see them as important. The composition has to withstand the test of time, and some of these new young painters, including me, we can judge these compositions because they did not withstand the test of time. So, and I'm sure that I won't be able to do that as well with my work. Someone after 200 years might be, or will be, better equipped. Will have way more knowledge. And I hope these people will then decide what's aesthetically pleasing, what's beautifully composed, and what was just what was just a trendy aesthetics at that time. Because I see this more and more these days, that kind of a painters painting what people likes to see, what people like to see, rather than just painted what need to be painted. And that's, again, that's just my opinion, so you should not even take it into consideration if you disagree, or maybe take it into consideration, and maybe I should probably shut up and focus more on painting and do not try to fill the unnecessary quiet moments with some random ideas of mine that are purely speculations, or still working on that feet, and maybe I will move a little bit towards the knee and ankle, so I have a little bit more of a reference point. slowly but surely, we're getting there. Yeah, it's getting way better. And that's something that I say whenever I paint. And then when I come to the painting the other day, I'm just, what happened? Who came to my studio during the night? And made it look so bad. And the reason being is that, I'm looking at it over and over and over and over again, and I'm getting biased towards the color, towards the shape, towards the temperature, towards the saturation, and it's just the fresh eye of another day. It's the only thing that helps me to really find the right answer, whether I was right or I was wrong. So that's why I also like to do big changes, not at the end of the session, but at the beginning of the session, right? So I have some idea, something that might be better or more beneficial to the painting. I try to fight with that urge to moving things around. And make a huge decisions at the end of the session. And that's what I talked about at the beginning, that I'm looking at it and assessing it. What am I going to do? How am I going to approach it? What's the best approach? And I talk to myself a lot. I mean, right now I'm talking to to a camera or to a microphone, but most of the time I talk to myself in my head, the same way that I'm talking to you right now. I'm asking these questions. I'm not. And I'm not stopping to ask them till I'm satisfied with the answers. Adjusting the background a little bit again, because this is about background is right now. I use the background color, I use foreground color as well. Background color, the background and color of that I use for painting this foot. And again, I can control only one side of the edge. That means that if I have something that is warm and flashy tone, I cannot paint a background with it, so I have a background brush and I have a foreground brush. And my background brush works like an eraser in this particular case. And I see I could actually adjust this a little bit because I think this is sticking out too much and creating like a unnecessary strong contrast. Yeah, that's better. again, it's just a scambling paint around, looking for a working with the values a little bit, getting them closer to each other in places where they need to be closer, and making it more saturated in other places. So again, those are just really small adjustments, but they play a huge role in developing the painting. And again, I don't want to leave the other foot underdeveloped. I want to work on them simultaneously for the time being, because I need them to work together as a whole. That's very important. For me right now, because I can lose track and I can get kind of a too much attention to one foot against the other, which it should be, because one's a forward, another one's in the background, but they still have to relate to each other. And I'm making adjustments and corrections too. All the time when I paint, that's like a main idea. It's, oh, I'm going to adjust this, I'm going to adjust that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And make a mistake like I did right now, and I placed some brush strokes that I don't like, I usually scrape the paint away. Placed down the shadow and it was way too warm, so I'm correcting that mistake and making it a little more, or making it not more cooler. But I'm trying to keep the same value. So again, I won't destroy the relationship between both feet. Keeping the cast shadow the same value at the moment will help me to judge the proper values and proper tone and proper saturation for both of the feet. It's kind of a little hint, and that's the reason why actually French academics love to do the shadows in one solid mass, because then no matter where you start to draw or paint or develop the form, you will always get the same result. So I'm trying to adjust my shadow the way that it's the same value. And if you hear music, I apologize for that, but my studio is in the very heart of the city, and there's a tourist season right now. They're having so much fun outside. Playing all kinds of different music. So some street performance, so I apologize for that, but there's nothing I can do with it. Okay, I worked with the shadow underneath them a little bit, even though it might look way dark right now. I wanted to see how far I can push it. And I think if I decide to darken or saturate grass a little bit more, I think it's going to be okay. Let me adjust this finger a little bit because, or the shape. Cool. Yeah, way better. It's just these little adjustments. They're so crucial. I can't even describe it. The devil is in detail. I really can't use another word, another idea that would help me to sum it up better. Sum it up better, I'm sorry. Okay, so right now I have one leg that is really bright and orange, another one. I'm pretty sure that you can see it right now on the camera. Trust me that these are not the exact representation of the colors that I see compared to what you see. So don't get scared if you see something really, really orange or something really, really desaturated or blue even or violet. The reason is that I have my camera on automatic setup just because I'm moving back and forth, and camera is doing what it wants to capture me. And white balance, it's also set up on auto because I have a problem with, as you might have seen, with the light. So it's changing and shifting in the studio all the time. And also, we probably use different screens to watch this. So I cannot adjust my settings for for every monitor possible. Even my two monitors does not really work perfectly together. And it's because one is really, really detailed and RGB 98%. Another one is just a secondary help monitor. So I can tell the differences between temperatures on the monitors immediately. So that's probably a problem with recording or recording live, that you cannot really have everything perfect or accurate, not even perfect, accurate. But one thing it's definitely true that one leg is more saturated, way more warm than the other. So I'm going to scramble a little bit the back foot as well, so I can connect them together. And I can actually judge it nicely through the background and through the shadow. So I'm bringing up the saturation a little bit, not as much as a forward leg, but I'm going to really push it a little bit more than it is right now towards the warmth. But I'm going to use a slightly different mixture, right? So previously it was orange and orange. It was yellow ochre with the red, which gives us an orange. And right now I'm adding a little bit of a green to it. Green is a cooler pigment. That means that it's going to, with scrambling, it's going to look slightly different. It's still going to be connected because there is a color harmony that's there. I'm using ochre in one, ochre in another one as well. And right now the question is how far I'm going to push it. And still maintain the similarity, and also difference, because it's again atmospheric perspective. It's still way too cool, I think. So I add a little bit more of that. Red, I'm sorry, yellow into it. So I get that desired temperature. And I'm not adding it everywhere. I just decided to do a little patches because I'm already thinking in terms of form and where the form breaks. So I have some neutrals and some warmth into it, depends on which part are most affected by light and which are least affected. And when I work in the shadow, right now, like I mentioned, in the light I used a little bit more paint. That's why I used scumbling, and in the shadow I'm using, but it just slipped out of my mind right now. Glazing, I'm sorry. So it's a glazing in the shadows, scumbling in the light today. And previously my shadows were neutral, black almost, and right now I'm giving them a little bit of warmth, the green warmth, because there is an idea of outside painting that light is warm and shadows are cool in the outside setup, which they work that way, and we have a beautiful examples of impressionistic paintings, or paintings of impressionists rather. And what I'm doing right now, I add a little bit of green into it, which warm it up, but not the way that it switched to a warm side. And the reason being is that I have a light that is hitting the greens around here, and I'm working from imagination mostly. Therefore, I have to. A lot of these reflections are invented, but if I know the rules that from observation and from the practice and observing, is that I have a sunlight that is warm, and it's illuminating these parts, so they're warm, and then I have a secondary light, which is that dome, the blue dome, which we call the sky, and that's a blue light which is hitting the grass, which is greener, and reflecting back here, so I have to catch a little bit of a green there. So the blue light, or the blue shadows or cool shadows, comes from the secondary light source, which is a dome, but then if they catch any other reflection, we have to adjust for it in the shadows, which is quite interesting idea, because I remember from the academy, and when we think about a classical French academics, they have a shadow which is consistent and warm, and they're even talking about that. The shadows, they don't change, but it's a really good helper. It's a really good starting point. And when I say starting point, I mean that at the beginning, when I approach the painting, I think of them as one shape. That is absolutely true, with one value. But as the painting progresses, I have to stop thinking about that way, because really, if there is something that changes the most, and especially outside, when you're painting from life under the natural light, the most of that is changed. It's actually a shadow rather than light, because the sunlight gives us kind of a constant one source of light that, it's so big and so powerful that it changes very little. But when you look at the shadows, shadows are always affected everything that it's around. So the moment that there is something greenish yellowish here, it's giving warmth to that cool shadow that it's supposed to be there. If I have a shadow that was casted over something very warm, you're going to see that warmth through that cool shadow. So it's really difficult then to manage these shadows, and I think that's the beauty of impressionistic painting, that they are so good with those shadows. They really understand the shifts in the temperatures and these subtle adjustments between warm and cool. And they even push it as far as turning form with warm and cool, instead of just turning form with the darker or lighter value, which is simply amazing, I think, to look at, because they're so good with it, Impressionists. Probably should maybe put more light on the fingers. On the back foot, I mean. Yeah, and I'm looking at the mirror reflection right now, and I think that it should definitely go that way. Yep. And even though it might look like that I'm adding more red into it, this is a very, very cool variant of a red. When you look at this red, which is, I believe, alizarin crimson next to vermilion, it's just completely different. And right now I add a little bit of a green into it, which completely destroyed that redness and made it kind of a muddy, desaturated color. Something that I really want at this particular moment, because I don't want to overpower the already existing so I put a little bit like there, a little there, and I'm kind of creating I'm working with the same idea than with the previous I'm working with the same idea that with the previous toes or the previous foot. I'm trying to create or improve rather, readability, and I'm making another portrait of a foot. And the reason being is because I don't want to have them the same. So I think that I will create the shadow right here to push it into background. So the idea is that I take, and I'm thinking that how, and again, I'm thinking that what's the top plane and what's the side plane, and how would shadow affect this. I think you could. And the reason why I want to put them in the shadow is that, first of all, I want to create a separation between the left and right. And the second one, one is in front of the another. And if one foot is in front, it's catching light. The second one, that it's underneath me at this point, going back into space, it has to be in the shadow. It's casting shade on itself. Actually, the leg is casting the shadow on the foot. But this shadow, it's really soft because of, again, the amount of reflection, in my understanding, because of the amount of reflection from the ground and actually from the whole environment. So this is something that, you know, is going to improve your painting as well, to understand these differences, because you can't always see them, but you know, if you know about them, you can really paint them in. It's like what one of my masters from the studio told me, that you will be able to see it if you believe in it, and you will be able to believe it. What's the saying? You will believe. Well, I got just confused right now. I confused myself. Let me try one more time. In order to see it, you must believe in it. In order to believe in it, you have to see it. So that's kind of a catch-22 phrase right there. It's enclosed circle. So the only thing that, you know, I can do right now is to insert the knowledge into it and break through that circle. So I'm aware of that exists because I observed it. I know that it exists because other painters used it. And right now I have to start believing that I am able to reproduce that as well, the phenomenon. So I'm switching between warm and cool, cool shadow. way too big of a toe. Let me see. No, not maybe. Maybe not. It might seem a little too big right now, and it's probably because it's not resolved yet. I didn't put all the details in, and that's why sometimes the sheer size of a shape without the detail might look too big. And it happens to me a lot. I have to be careful with it because then I'm making things with more detail, way smaller, because I'm looking, let's say, for an eye that has a lot of detail, nose that has a lot of detail, and then my eye is tricking me that I need to make it smaller, because the detail doesn't matter, but the moment you start putting details in, certain shapes get smaller and smaller, so I have to be careful about that. And again, I'm helping myself with background, adjusting the background, or adjusting the shape of fingers through a background. Which you might find counterintuitive, but trust me, it really helps. Because like I said before, with the brush you can always control only one side of the edge. pass. So what about this? Is this going to work? I don't know. It seems a little too much. Well, maybe. Maybe. And this is another example why I have multiple pigments, because some of the pigments are transparent, some of the pigments are opaque, and with the glazing in the shadows, when you want to keep that transparency, you might want to use transparent pigments. And it seems like those fingers are right now really cut out from there because the values are not right. And this is something that, you know, I talked about, that I did not adjust it. Or I did not adjust, the values properly at the beginning, which annoys me a lot. But if you are working from life and looking at something, it's definitely easier to do that than when you invent things from your own head. Then you have to account for these mistakes, and I'm okay with it. Easier way would probably be to use a picture or the live model, but I don't have a live model here right now, even though I wish I had. And like I mentioned before, I don't really like to paint from a photograph. So I have just the anatomy and general understanding of a color theory and value theory, and you know, I cannot always. I should. I wish I could, but I can't hit it right. Ooh, that's way too red. Okay, that's closer. Okay. And I don't want this to be such a harsh transition, so I'm going to soften it a little bit so it dissolves. So it's kind of a lost edge. So the transition is not that harsh, and it doesn't seem like someone cut his finger off. Same goes for these shadows. Just a nice soft transition. I don't want to have a really hard, thick shadows on the top. I prefer to have it underneath because that's where the most of the darkness occurs in shadows. Those are areas that kind of enclose. Shadows and do not allow reflected light get into it as much as like the area that is here on the top of the foot. Again, there's not stuff that I see, that's stuff that I know, and I work with this kind of idea. That's why on the top I'm trying to keep the shadow more like a mid-tone. Okay. Let me just adjust this a little bit because that's another part that's a little bit more work. Even though again the knee is in the shadow, I know, I understand that. I still need to create some interest in it. Maybe there's a little bit of a light that it's catching. And if I don't like it, I can always, come up, glaze over it, or just scrape the color, scrape the paint right now, and I repainted it with the shadow. Yeah, I just need a little bit more of a resolution. So again, by more I mean that they're very close on the value, these two, and very close on the temperature. So I need to work on that a little bit. That means that I have a kind of a desaturated green here, so I need desaturated redness into this, or warmth. So let me see. And you might look at the colors that I'm adding or pigments that I'm adding to this red, and you'd be like, you're adding green into a red. Well, yes and no, because as I mentioned before, I'm working with the properties of the pigments rather than just with brands. Rather than just with brands, and this is a red that has a lot of blue pigment in it, and this is green that has a lot of blue pigment in it. So when I'm mixing them together, instead of simply neutralizing them, they are turning towards kind of a violet pigment, or purple if you wish, which is kind of a reddish family against the green family, desaturated green family, which gives me a little bit of a temperature shift. And I'll step back, and it doesn't look like a purple, it looks like a red against the green. Plus, it's a very cool, cool red. It means that it helps that idea that it's turning away from us. Because as the form turns away from your perspective, as the form turns away from us, it tends to cool slightly, like with atmospheric perspective. Even though it's a really, really small distance, we have to create that illusion in order to successfully represent that turn of the form. And I have a tangent right here, and I don't know what to do with it. What's tangent? Tangent is when I have three shapes meeting in one point. So in other way, I have three lines meeting in one point, so it's kind of everything pointing to that little spot. So, and I want to show that fabric on the top. It's front of a knee. Knee is front of the calf, and calf is front of the fabric behind, and the fabric behind it's front of a background. So I want to create those steps, because creating these overlaps, I create the sense of a distance or illusion of distance. Because one thing it's a front of another rather than just next to each other. Because if I put these shapes next to each other, I will have something that's called tangent. And even though in my mind I know that it should be behind, the eye is going to still question that. So I have to figure out a different shape for that. But again, working with a different shape right here might change all the relationships with this. So I have to be very careful. And that probably is the good place to stop for me right now, because I need to figure that out. I need to figure it out. I know that I have a thick, chunky fingers there. I know that they're not properly developed yet, but that's okay. I have to figure this out, because what if I have to move the foot? I don't want to have everything resolved here, because then my brain is going to fight against my gut feeling that it has to be moved, and Brad's going to be, no, you work so hard on this, and you spend so much time, and you turn the forms, and you play the temperatures, everything works together. Well, it doesn't really matter if the composition is wrong, and if the position and the relationship between knee, between foot, ankle, knee, hip, and head is wrong. They have to be correct within a composition. That's what I was trying to say, basically. So yeah, that's probably it for today. I know that I sometimes talk too much nonsense most of the time, but I hope that this discourse is helping you to maybe clarify your own questions that you have about painting, because I think that's the way to improve and move forward. There is something that you've been taught in the academy. There is something that you have some resources. You might be reading some books. You might be looking to. You might be going to museums, and there's all that information that is in your head. And you have to summarize it, and you have to get some kind of a result. I know that I'm adding another idea into the bunch of ideas, so it's up to you right now to continue painting and practicing and developing that skills. And the skill, and also you're developing the skills of recognizing that someone is telling you something wrong, or something that sounds good on the paper, but in reality doesn't work. And I might be saying same things to you as well. Most of these ideas that I have in my head are really at the edge of my own understanding. This painting is right at the edge of my own understanding of what oil painting is. So examine what I say, and let me know if I should add or talk about something specific, or change something. All right, thank you. I appreciate it. Have a nice day. Take care. Bye.